Good morning. Welcome to TVP World News. I'm Anna Kalczyńska. Russia claims to have taken control of 2 more Ukrainian settlements in the Donetsk region. Ukrainian command, on the other hand, says that Moscow's summer offensive is failing and that Ukraine was able to check on the Russian advance in the Northern Sumy region. The Russian Defense Ministry says that its forces captured the Novosherhivka and Shevchenko villages in the eastern Donetsk region, while destroying Ukrainian air defense systems, drone factories and ammo depots across the country. Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky says in turn that his forces are focusing on the defense in Sumy region. According to Syrsky, the Ukrainian army was able to force the Russians to redeploy from Sumy by increasing pressure on the Kursk region of Russia. The Ukrainian army says 154 combat clashes have been reported over the past day in Ukraine, with the most intense fighting happening in the east sectors of the front line. As defense spending and Donald Trump grabbed the headlines of the week's NATO summit, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky faced a battle for attention. And despite sitting down with Trump on the sidelines and his country coming away with a pledge of billions in aid from Europe and Canada, NATO's longest-serving spokesperson told TVP World that Ukraine will be walking away with some disappointment.
While the NATO summit in The Hague is widely seen as successful due to the allies agreeing on 5% of GDP defense spending by 2035, Ukraine has lost some of the spotlight compared to previous summits.
We didn't have a NATO-Ukraine Council meeting as we have had every year in the previous at the previous 3 summits after Russia's full-fledged invasion of Ukraine. So from that point of view, of course, there is an element of disappointment for Ukraine.
However, Ukraine has not walked away empty-handed. Apart from the continued expression of support,
our European and Canadian allies have stepped up and have already pledged, where we originally would be able to announce a 20 billion over the first 3 months of this year. It is now they will provide over 35 billion euros of additional security assistance to Ukraine for the year ahead.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky got the meeting he wanted with US President Donald Trump. And while nothing substantial came from that meeting, the American leader is at least acknowledging some of the harsh truths about the Russian invasion.
You once said that you would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. You later said you said that sarcastically.
Well, of course it was sarcastic.
But you've now been in office for 5 months and 5 days. Why have you not been able to end the Ukraine war?
Because it's more difficult than people would have any idea.
And that difficulty stems from Russia refusing to agree to an immediate ceasefire. So, as the war continues, what's the next step? Europe is convinced the United States needs to ramp up its sanctions to force Russian leader Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table.
President Trump is quite, clearly, for whatever reason, he's quite clearly not willing to do that. Back then, Senator Rubio was quite anti-Russian, and he was very hard on Russia. He was one of these Russia hawks. So there were high expectations that when he was appointed as the Secretary of State, that he would, sort of support a much stronger American pressure on Russia.
But Secretary Rubio is saying, not yet.
If we did what everybody here wants us to do and crush them with more sanctions, we probably lose our ability to talk to them about the ceasefire. If there is an opportunity for us to make a difference and get them to the table, we're going to take it.
In the end, Ukraine is leaving the summit without a breakthrough, but with its NATO allies getting stronger. For all intents and purposes, that is still a win for Kyiv.
And that sends a message, together with a commitment to continued funding and military support to Ukraine, that Ukraine remains very much in the focus of NATO attention.
Thank you.
For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski provided a summary of this year's NATO summit in The Hague, describing it as a productive gathering for all attendees, NATO allies, Europe and Ukraine. He emphasized that US President Donald Trump now recognizes that it is Russia and Russia alone that is slowing down the path to an unconditional peace in Ukraine.
It was a very fruitful summit. I believe President Trump now understands that it's Russia that does not want to end the war, that Ukraine has unconditionally agreed to a ceasefire, and Russia that continues to stall. In my remarks, I emphasize that this shows a lack of respect from Vladimir Putin toward President Trump's peace initiatives. On this point, all statements at the NATO-Ukraine Council were aligned. According to the Ukrainian side, the meeting between President Zelensky and President Trump was fruitful. And finally, we had a meeting in the E5 format, invented in Warsaw, which includes Poland, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and Italy.
Did Ukraine find the NATO summit in The Hague disappointing? Partially, yes, as it mostly centered on the alliance's internal matters. That's according to Louise Wirenga, a lecturer in international relations at the Baltic Defense College. Nonetheless, Wirenga pointed out that there are positive aspects to consider as well, especially NATO's continued strong support for Ukraine.
The Secretary General, Mark Rutte, has said that, Ukraine's future is in Europe. Currently, the current administration is not on board with that. And last year's summit, to bring back the 75th anniversary summit in Washington, of course, there was this metaphor of the bridge. Well, that's not really there, but at least the Secretary General has a positive assessment on the future of Ukraine being in NATO. But again, there never really was a concrete year where they were supposed to join. It was all, left open to a lot of things, including the election that happened last November and the Trump administration taking form in January. So I think that, there are some things that could be improved. Certainly, there's a lot for Ukraine and European allies to continue to do, but I think that support is very much there, but that this summit had a little bit of a different form due to other political factors. You can look at the summit and look at negative things, but you can also look at positive things. So, for example, a lot of reports have said that President Trump was ambiguous on Russia, but when he was asked during the press conference, does Russia have territorial ambitions? He said that it's possible. So I think that this is just going to be a continuation, and we'll see what happens at the summit next year in Turkey. But it's going to be a long year in between for Ukraine and for allies as well.
According to Seoul's National Intelligence Service, North Korea may deploy more troops to Ukrainian territory. South Korean intelligence believes Russia may be preparing for a large-scale offensive against Ukraine in July or August, saying it may explain additional deployment of North Korean soldiers. The Institute for the Study of War took to social media, claiming such a development could mark a significant battlefield inflection and could improve Moscow's ability to carry out multiple offensive operations in multiple directions at the same time. According to South Korean intelligence, Pyongyang's troops are likely to arrive on the front lines in July or August of this year. So far, between 13,000 and 15,000 North Korean troops have served in Russia's war in Ukraine. Recently released Belarusian opposition leader Siarhei Tsikhanouski and his wife Sviatlana joined us in our Warsaw studio to share what he endured during his years in prison. They spoke with TVP World about what they had to endure and about their plans for the future.
They used to tell me, no one knows you, no one remembers you, you're not getting letters because no one is writing to you. And yet, when I was in the same prison before, I received up to 300 letters a day. Now, I've been sitting here for 2.5 years, not a single letter. They've forgotten you. They said the same thing to the other political prisoners. You're worthless to them. Everyone out there is corrupt. They steal money. They do nothing. Yes, they put pressure on us every single day. They said, you'll be here forever. In Belarus, they are extending prison terms for inmates. At first, I was sentenced to 18 years, and then, supposedly for bad behavior, they added another 18 months. For example, they come into your cell and say, it's not clean enough here, meaning you're not cleaning properly. They take a rag, wipe a spot on the wall where the paint is peeling and say, see, he's not cleaning. And then they add more prison time. First, they give you 15 days in solitary confinement, but that's just the beginning. You're punished administratively, and that becomes the basis for opening a criminal case under Article 401. And then they add another year and a half, sometimes 2 years to your sentence. They told me directly, there will be many more such extensions. You'll never get out.
This exclusive interview with Siarhei Tsikhanouski and his wife Sviatlana will premiere on World News tonight at 8 p.m. CET. European leaders are being urged to step up in the face of Russia's growing threats and speed up trade talks with Washington. Our correspondent Alex Kadir reports on the latest European Council meeting that took place in Brussels.
Well, European leaders gathered in Brussels were here to cross T's and dot I's on the EU's position, particularly off the back of that meeting of NATO leaders in The Hague, where they agreed to spend 5% of GDP on defence by 2035. Most of them, at least, agreed, with the exception of Spain, Slovakia, perhaps other member states. But here they are united. They will spend more. They will use the EU's mechanisms, be it that 150 billion euro fund for loans or a raised debt limit on spending on defence. Alignment on that, however, not necessarily as much alignment on Ukraine's membership of the European Union. Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, still very vocally against Ukraine joining the EU. This is why.
The problem is the war. If we would integrate Ukraine into the European Union, we would integrate the war. And we would not like to be together in one community with a country who is in war and represent an imminent danger on us. Because if a member of the European Union is in war, it means that European Union is war, and we don't like it.
So some minor division on Ukraine, or at least Hungary an outlier there. Where we've also seen division is on Israel. Now we've seen the EU's External Action Service saying that Israel breached its agreement with the EU. Member states not sure what to do about that yet. They will keep talking. And finally on trade, a crucial issue for these member states, they will encourage the European Commission to find a framework agreement, some kind of lighter deal to be able to make progress in the negotiations with the United States and perhaps deliver a win for Donald Trump. Clearly, this meeting was very much about aligning the member states in the face of the Russian threat, and also a negotiating position in the face of an uncertain support from the United States. In Brussels, I'm Alex Kadir for TVP World.
The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, congratulated Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk on the achievements Poland accomplished while at the helm of the Council of the European Union. Poland was in the leadership position for the first 6 months of 2025. As of July, Denmark will take over.
Your presidency was challenging, but you delivered. You closed 37 major legislative files and reached negotiation mandates on another 18. Those are impressive figures. You advanced support to Ukraine with agreements on our 16th and 17th sanctions packages and new tariffs on Russian and Belarusian goods. You pushed forward on temporary protection, showing to our continent the power of Polish generosity and solidarity. You helped fast-track the SAFE regulation and moved forward with the European Defence Industry Programme to make our common home stronger and safer. This was a focused, efficient presidency that laid the groundwork for Denmark as of July.
And that's all in this edition of World News, but please stay tuned to TVP World for more commentaries and continuous coverage.